A great war begins, one that threatens to tear the land asunder. A hero sides with the Laguz and Justice. The Maiden of Dawn fights for the Bjork and Daein. Their armies will collide, while the flames of the medallion burn brighter. Part 3, Intersecting Vows.
Welcome back to Fire Emblem Radiant Dawn. Last time, we began our retreat from Bednion, and then found out that a new power was entering the war. This time, we return to a party we haven't controlled in a very long time. But at what cost?
During the war between the Laguz Alliance and Bednion, the 3 remaining countries on Tellius, Daein, Crimea, and Goldoa, have thus far remained neutral. In Daein, the war for independence is over, and Prince Peleus has been crowned king. Daein is now free from Bednion's rule, and is once again universally recognized as a sovereign nation. Micaiah decides to honor the promise she had made and continue on as the general of Daein's armies until the country stabilizes. Most of her companions remain by her side, helping to restore their beloved country. It is their hope that Daein will recover soon, both politically and socially. Focused as they are, they realize that they can spare no time on outside concerns, including the current war in Bednion. However, King Peleus has a mysterious change of heart, and orders Micaiah into the war on Bednion's side.
Chapter 6, A Reason to Fight. Now, the name of this chapter is interesting to me. I decided to look up the name of it in Japanese, and as I thought, it's Battle for Whose Sake. Now, this is an expression that you might be familiar with if you've played any of the games in Japanese. It seems like the creators of Fire Emblem really love this expression, because it's it's partially the title of Chapter 10 in Genealogy, and it's also the name of Zephiel's battle theme in FE6, Battle for Whose Sake. I tried to look up to see if it's a generic Japanese anime expression, but it seems like it's actually not. When I Google the exact Japanese phrase, all the results I get are from Fire Emblem, so maybe the Japanese writers just really love that expression. I still think A Reason to Fight is a very good way to translate it though. This is our first time seeing Soth since the end of Part 1. And this music, I love how this music just adds to the weight of this situation. Considering how much Bednion oppressed them, I wouldn't even trust Peleus at this point. Something's clearly wrong with him if so soon after breaking the yoke of Bednion oppression, he's decided, oh, let's side with him again. No, I don't think it's that. I think Izuka not being around would make him a lot better, but yeah, something's clearly wrong. I've just realized this is actually kind of dark from a gameplay standpoint, because the enemies we're going to fight in this chapter are worth a ton of experience, so maybe this line is justifying that, which has some really dark implications. So it's pretty much saying what we're all thinking right now. So, I find this part of the game really interesting because, in a way, and this is something that I never really thought about before, but This is as close as we get in a Fire Emblem game, unless you count certain points of conquest, to playing as a Camus archetype character. We're finally seeing things from their perspective. We also see the darker side of Micaiah's devotion to Daein here. I just find the multiple perspectives of this storyline really interesting. I don't know if many of you expected this kind of thing to happen, but as soon as a huge continent-spanning war occurred, in a game where you have multiple parties and multiple different perspectives, it was inevitable that you'd eventually be playing as the opposite side of the war. Well, at least she cares enough about Soth to respect his decision. I mean, Soth's not going to want to fight the father of his children. I'm running that meme into the ground, I'm not going to say that. But yeah, it looks like Soth is more loyal to Micaiah than he idolizes Ike, and that's saying something. And by the way, one of Soth's lines in Heroes spoiled that he has to fight Commander Ike eventually. So thank you so much, Heroes. It's not the worst of the Radiant Dawn spoilers that's in Heroes by a long shot, but it's still pretty bad. And by the way, that line from Soth, very, very true. This is going to be an extremely important battle preparations, and a very, very important base. So, here we are at the base, and guess what? Our Part 1 team is back. It's been so long since we last saw them. They have the exact same items and stats they did when Part 1 ended, so here's Micaiah. Her speed is still terrible. Soth is actually going to start to be not doing so well at this point in the game. His speed is lower than I'd like it to be at this point, so that's not good. Volug, as you can see, his transform stats are now reflecting his true transform stats rather than his half-shifted stats. Although, half-shift works a little bit differently now. So he can now elect to use Wild Heart whenever he wants to, but the transform gauge will decrease as normal. So think of Wild Heart as being a free Laguz stone that halves his transform bonuses. Also, Volug no longer gives a game over if he dies, and that's kind of a good thing because Volug at this point in the game is going to be a lot weaker compared to the enemies. And hey, Aaron's back. I'm sure a lot of you are excited about that. Nolan is back, so it is once again Nolaning time. Edward is back, I'm definitely excited about that, though his skill and speed are looking definitely pretty low compared to Mia, but his level's a lot lower and he's got almost as much strength. It just goes to show how strong he is. Laura's back, she's mostly just a staff bot. Jill, who still has ridiculously bad strength. She does have a speed wing though, I might give that to someone else. Zehawk, who's still pretty solid. And the three people that I never really used. So, I'm going to manage my items later, because firstly, I want to do info. I don't think there's anything I can really do for support, other than try and support Jill with someone, but she's going to be flying very far away from the rest of the army in this chapter, so I might not do that. There's a crap ton of info conversations in this chapter, all of them very important, so let's go. This is the shortest one of all. Interestingly enough, every info conversation in this chapter takes place in this exact background. Kinda weird, because Micaiah is one of the few people that Master Crowns don't even work on. She has a plot-based promotion. So, no third-tiering Micaiah early. Yes, and by not everyone, I mean not you. And Soth can't use it either, so kind of ironic. This is mainly so you can third-tier someone of your choice in the Dawn Brigade. There's an equally short conversation with Jill, though I kind of wish this one was longer. You'd think Jill would have major reservations about this battle. And she does ask a little bit, but she doesn't seem to be as conflicted as you'd expect. The conflict, though, that she has will be definitely gone into in optional conversations during this chapter. Yeah, you'd think that Jill would be more concerned about fighting Laguz than she would be about aiding Bednion. So a pretty short conversation. With that, we get a Brave Axe. I said that we'd be getting some very good items, base conversations in the next time the Dawn Brigade comes back, and this is one of them. So the Brave Axe is pretty useful. I might try and avoid using it that much in this chapter. I can probably convoy the Speedwing. Now we have 3 very, very special base conversations. I'll talk about them in general after I'm done with all 3. Firstly, Edward. So that's kind of interesting. Daein has national treasures. You'd think somebody would have used this against us in the last game, but there is a reason for that. We get a little bit of extra development for Edward here. Now I'm trying to imagine what a song about Edward would sound like, but we get Caladbolg, not to be confused with Titus's weapon from Final Fantasy X. Obviously has the same mythological, basis. And Leonardo gets a special bow. I did allude to this all the way back in his bio. This one's actually one of the more useful of these 3 weapons. Because yeah, as you can tell, Nolan's going to be getting a weapon as well. That is true, it's definitely better than a silver bow. Again, and you know, I'd agree that it was crafted for better hands than yours. Unfortunately, it is Leonardo exclusive, so I can't actually give it to anyone better. I like that we get to see all 3 of these guys react to how the war is happening. And so we get, Lunash? I'm not really sure how that's supposed to be pronounced. A lot of fans just call it Luga whatever. And finally, Nolan. Interestingly, has the same name as one of the types of monsters in Sacred Stones. That's still a pretty nice moment for Nolan. And with that, Nolan gets Tarvos. I'll just convoy that chest key because we're not going to need it in this chapter. So, let's go over those 3 weapons now. So, firstly, we have Nolan's Tarvos. That is a stupidly good axe. 18 might, 100 hit, and 5 critical, and not only that, it gives +4 defense when equipped. Tarvos is insane and makes Nolan incredibly useful during this chapter. Next up is Edward's Caladbolg. Caladbolg is a decently powerful sword. It's not the best thing in the world, and it's certainly not the worst either though. But when equipped, it grants a pretty decent +8 luck, so it makes Edward far better at dodge tanking than he normally is. And finally, Leonardo. Not only is the Lugnash, or however you pronounce that, an incredibly strong bow. By the way, yeah, these 3 weapons are all personal, so only these 3 can use their respective weapons. This one gives +5 speed, which helps patch up one of Leonardo's weaknesses. It is also worthwhile to note that with effectiveness bonus, this thing can actually one-shot a lot of flyers even if Leonardo isn't trained, and a lot of people use that to argue for Leonardo being a lot better than many people give him credit for. So, I said that these 3 weapons are very special. Here's why. They didn't exist in the Japanese version. Neither did those 3 base conversations. In the Japanese version, you only had the Soth and Jill base conversations in this chapter, so the localization actually created 3 entirely new weapons, which is pretty impressive because that includes battle models as well, but they also wrote from scratch 3 entirely new base conversations. So those base conversations, all of that is entirely a product of the localization. They did not exist in the Japanese version. So that's really interesting, and of course, this does make this chapter a lot easier in the English version than it is in the Japanese version, even on hard mode. So, it might be a little cheap to an extent, but here's the thing. This is generally regarded as an incredibly brutal chapter, and if you did not train the Dawn Brigade properly during Part 1, it can be outright unwinnable, especially on the higher difficulties. So, I think the developers of the localization made the right call here, giving the player some extra weapons just in case they're struggling. So that's that. Now let's swap around some items. I don't really need that Master Crown yet. Soft is going to go ahead and convoy that Reaper. You know what? Firstly, I'm going to go to the shop. Because we have some generic soldiers manning the armory, but we have a lot of good things to buy here. Some very powerful weapons are buyable here, including 2 varieties of crossbows. And some magic, but really Micaiah only needs Daein at this point. But what's really interesting is bargains. Holy crap, that is a lot of bargains. So, yeah, there's a few bargains that I definitely am interested in. The first is Physic. I highly recommend Physic because it lets Micaiah contribute by healing while still staying far away from the fight so she doesn't get killed easily. Physic is great. It also boosts Micaiah's staff rank up very quickly. Now, the Torch Staff is a little interesting because why would they be selling you a Torch Staff now? Well, you can probably tell we're going to be having a Fog of War chapter. There's also another Beast Killer. Now, Beast Killers have such low uses that it might be worthwhile to buy another one. I said before in part 1 that the Beast Killer is a very good dagger, but it's also an incredibly good weapon when the Dawn Brigade return in part 3, and you can probably tell why. Also, if you want a really strong dagger on Soft, you can get the Silver Dagger. Honestly, just get the Beast Killer. The Beast Killer is so much better. We also have a whole ton of weapons here. I might end up buying that for Aaron, and I definitely want the Storm Sword. The Storm Sword is the upgraded version of the Wind Edge. 50 hit rate, but that doesn't really mean much when Sword Masters are so accurate. So, in order to afford these things, because I'm usually used to keeping at least one of my gems rather than sending them to part 3. Well, I mean, this is part 3, but I'm in the Grail Mercenaries. So, I'm going to be selling a bunch of stuff. So, let's go ahead and sell that Reaper card. I doubt I'll need that. Let's see what else I can sell here. I'm going to go ahead and just sell a bunch of vulneraries that I really don't think I'm going to need. I have a ton of these, and they're actually worth a decent amount of gold each. And I don't think I'll be needing that many of them going forward, so I have a pretty solid amount of money right now. Also, these used to be Tormod's. I can go ahead and sell these because he's not going to be coming back for a while. These used to be Ileana's, and she's now with the Grail Mercenaries, so I can safely sell these too. I might as well sell L-Light as well, because, like I said, Micaiah doesn't need anything more than Fanny for the rest of the entire game, basically. So let's go ahead and sell that. So now I have a lot more cash. First thing on my agenda is the Physics Staff. I definitely want to get that from Micaiah. Next on the agenda, an extra Beast Killer for Soft. This is going to be very useful for a lot of Part 3 for the Dawn Brigade. Going to get a Beast Killer for him. Next, I'm going to take that Storm Sword. And then I'll probably have to send it to Convoy. And then I'm going to buy... Actually, what's the might like on Aaron's Nox? The Silver Lance is only 1 higher. Maybe I don't even need to buy that. So the next time we have access to the Dawn Brigade, actually maybe the chapter after, but we will be getting more gold for the Dawn Brigade eventually, so I might want to save the rest of this money. So let's see, our inventories are extremely full, but at this point, I highly doubt the Bronze Dagger is going to be useful for anything, although it is kind of accurate. Vol's going to go ahead and swap over his... You know what, okay, firstly let's do some other inventory management. So let's get rid of that, and let's take a Storm Sword for you. That's really all you need between Kalad Bolg, the Brave Sword, and that. Nolan, he doesn't actually need anything more, but he can probably afford to swap his N-Herb for a Vulnerary. Because N-Herb just won't cut it at this point in the game. Aaron's also kind of fine, except he's going to go ahead and take the Short Spear, which, by the way, used to be Jarod's. How ironic, we're actually kind of fighting for his side now. So Laura, I think, is okay. We won't be needing to restore. As for Jill, I'm not going to need the hammer, because there aren't any armored enemies in this chapter. May as well take the short axe. And apart from that, I think Jill is fine for weapons as well. Zehawk, I don't really have that much in the way of decent swords, but might as well take an extra steel sword for you. And Leonardo, I think everyone else is fine for weapons for now. Yeah, that should be good. Now, this is the most important part, manage. Not award experience, even though we do have a ton of bonus experience, and everyone does seem to be pretty low leveled by Part 3 standards. I'm not going to be using bonus experience yet, because no one's really got to the point where they'll be getting better gains from bonus experience than regular leveling. What is important though, skill management. This is absolutely vital in this chapter, for one very specific reason. So, I'm going to actually remove Paragon from Jill for now. There is a skill here. Remember this skill scroll that we picked up all the way back in 1.4? Remember how I said this was going to become very, very important later? The treasure here is a Beast Foe scroll. You want to find the Beast Foe scroll. It will help so much later on. Trust me, don't leave this chapter without the Beast Foe scroll. This is why we're going to be fighting a lot. In fact, we're going to be exclusively fighting Beast Lagoos in this chapter. And because of this, Beast Foe is effectively triple weapon might on everything. Well, everything that's transformed at least. As you can tell, Beast Foe is an extremely powerful skill in this chapter. So who you give it to is a major concern. I personally have two people who I like going with Beast Foe for most of the time. The first is Nolan. With Tarvos, Nolan one-shots the vast majority of enemies in this chapter with Beast Foe, even on hard mode, which is a pretty impressive feat, so I really like to give this to Nolan sometimes. But another candidate is Jill. Now usually Jill has a lot more strength than this, but if you have a forged steel axe, Jill can also one-shot the vast majority of enemies in this chapter with Beast Foe, and she can also fly. Being able to fly is really, really useful in this chapter, because there's going to be a lot of swamp terrain to slow us down. Speaking of which, poor Fiona. Yeah, the first time the Dawn Brigade comes back in part 3, and she's already useless. Well, not so much useless as the chapter hates her, but yeah. So usually I like to go for Nolan or Jill with Beast Foe. You could go for Zehawk or even Volug if you want. Volug can use it. Edward, I don't know. Edward usually kills most of the cats if he doubles them, and he generally doesn't kill the tigers that easily anyway, even with Beast Foe, whereas Nolan and Jill can potentially one-shot some things with it. I think, and this is horrifically out of character, but I'm going to give this to Jill. Now this is purely from a gameplay standpoint. And that means Paragon is free. But also, I might want to give Vantage to Edward, because he can use the Vantage cancel combo. Nolan might as well take Parody, even though Parody is not going to be that effective in this chapter, although if we fight some Lagoos because there is defensive terrain in this chapter, that could help, although that will cancel his support with Edward, and I plan to keep him and Edward as a team in this chapter. And I bet a lot of you have been looking forward to this. I have actually decided, what the heck, let's give Aaron Paragon. He deserves it after his performance in one endgame. That also leaves Renewal free, so who gets Renewal? I'm thinking either Volk or Soph. Maybe Soph. And that is every skill that I can assign. I like to keep Discipline on Micaiah, because that will help rank up her staves incredibly quickly. And I forgot that her light rank was this low, so yeah, she might want to fight some things to get that up, because I do want to kind of try and get her to an SS rank by endgame. That's also partially why I'm saving one of my arm scrolls. So, anyway, I think, let me just check, is there any... Imbue is a very good skill, I might as well take it off of you now. Savior's actually... You know what? Does Volug... Yeah, he's got capacity for it. Jill, unfortunately, doesn't have enough, but let's go ahead and give Volug Savior. And who here has a good magic stat for Imbue? Many people don't. Nolan's is decent, though. Jill's is decent, but she doesn't have enough space, and Nolan doesn't have enough space either, because Imbue, I believe, is 20 capacity? No, it's 15. I have to remove Resolve from Nolan in order to do that, and I kind of like him having Resolve. Actually, Zehawk wouldn't be bad with Imbue. The last time I removed Fortune from someone, it came back to bite me. Well, I mean... Meg would probably say that if something does happen to him for the exact same reason would happen to Meg, she'd probably say that'd be something to tell the grandkids, wouldn't it? But yes, hopefully, yeah, I still don't really ship Zehawk and Meg at all, but I just thought that was kind of funny. Anyway, I think that should be everything I need to do. But yeah, make sure that you are very, very well prepared for this chapter, because this chapter is actually a pretty tough one. I'm pretty confident that I can handle it decently well. I practiced it, and it went way more smoothly than I ever would have expected it to. But that's partially because I'm used to this chapter on hard mode, and this chapter on hard mode is really ridiculous. So, let me show you exactly why it's so ridiculous. I've got a bit of gold to spare. I might as well go ahead and grab this. Okay, I almost forgot about this. The Speed Wing. We got this in one endgame. The weird thing is, I kind of want to use this on Edward just so he gets to doubling the cats faster. Also, every little bit of evasion on Edward is going to matter a lot in this chapter, at least for the strategy that I plan on using. So I'm going to go ahead and use the Speed Wing on here. I was going to go ahead and put the Olivia Grass on Volan, because it will actually be useful for him in this chapter. So we've made it all the way from Daein to the Raban River. It's funny how Ranulph is just blatantly stating the obvious here. Finally, the fog is actually going to cause a fog of war chapter. Not that that's a good thing. I find it really interesting that you're hearing the generic enemy theme for these two. I just love the multiple perspectives of this game. Scrimir, please stop being an idiot. Although I do feel really bad for him. That's not good. And this is just something else that I love about this chapter. I love that you're hearing this creepy theme when it's you who's actually, who's ready to ambush the enemy. It's just like, there's something so unsettling about this. The fact that you were controlling this side before, and now you're seeing them being caught in such a bad position, and guess what? You're the one controlling the people who are about to slaughter them. It's just, I feel like nothing is a more effective player punch in a game than having you fight characters you previously controlled. So like I said, the Dawn Brigade is back, but at what cost?